What is the long-term proportion of local versus regional transit investment needed to meet California's CO2 reduction goals? It feels a little off topic, unless someone wants to jump in with an answer.
It is related, but I have to say I wouldn't have the specific number. But folks can check our website, onebigarea.org, and we should be able to respond to that.
We had a request of Dwayne Bay for his website, please.
www.21elements, 21elements.com.
This is the big picture. What is the carrying capacity of the Bay Area for electricity, water, garbage, etc.? And how does this influence future growth? Now, I would turn it around and say, are all these factors considered as we look at possible sites for housing?
No.
Too sad.
We are coordinating with the various agencies that take on those responsibilities. I have to say our main concern is the coordination with the water agencies. It's a very fragmented set of water districts that we have in the region, and that's kind of on our next step.
To Dwayne, complete communities, in quotes, define it and tell how a city benefits by creating such in 3 words or less. Does that question make sense to you? Okay.
3 words or less.
No.
It was on Miriam's slide, so she's going to answer that. And Sam mentioned it as well. Complete communities. Yeah. In my mind, the singular dimension of completeness that's the most important has to do with the range of incomes and ages. Traditional towns, 4-generational families, not unusual in the same building, certainly within easy walking distance, say the same block. You know, we're only at this point 2 to 3 generations in terms of the dominant ethnicity in this country. We're only 2 to 3 generations away from that. And in the emerging ethnicities in this country as a demographic cohort, we're still in the middle of that. So in the North Faro section of our county, we call that overcrowding, because there will be an extended family, 3 or 4 generations, 8 to 12 people living in one single family home. So I mean, from the big picture, a complete community means being able to have 3 to 4 generations comfortably in relationship with each other, whether that's in a building or in a town, or in a region where they can get to each other without a car, and to have it be a common pattern, and all of the things that go with it, which then gets to the other things like worship, play, shopping, economic endeavor, employment, blah, blah, blah.
I was very impressed. Can cities require RHNA identified sites to dedicate a portion of their land to nonprofit development, e.g. 100% affordable, as a way to boost the total production of lower income affordable housing, higher density zoned areas?
So I would say yes, they can. It can become complicated, but cities, especially if there's any publicly owned land, often can dedicate that for affordable housing development. There are also tools that would not necessarily require affordable housing development, but would heavily incentivize it. So the town of Corte Madera in Marin has implemented something called an affordable housing overlay zone. So they actually picked 4 sites in the city and said, we have a gigantic affordable housing need. They are another one of these small cities with many low-income workers commuting in. We're going to say, there are some commercial sites that, and we're only going to let you build housing on those sites if you build it 100% affordable. So it's a way to set aside land without sort of tying the hands of landowners, which can get a little bit complicated, but still using the local government zoning authority to sort of make sure that you get housing for lower income people. I want to point out it's a really important question because one of the major issues with state housing element law is that they treat density as a proxy for affordability. So they say, if you're going to build more than 30 units an acre in the Bay Area, we're going to count that as land available for affordable housing. We all know that there's many areas where multifamily, 30 unit an acre housing development is not affordable to anyone except very upper income folks.
Very relevant to who we are today. The percentage of seniors in the population is increasing. Have you found them, the seniors, less enthused about supporting all these changes for housing and higher density? Now that's one of those, in your experience, in your community, are you finding resistance from the senior community?
I would say in general that's the driving force, and there's a big component. There are a number of people that will be driving this more accessible neighborhoods. There are a number of folks that would like to stay in their single-family homes and have the ability to bring those services to their homes. But I would say it's a higher share of our senior population is pursuing an easier accommodation with transit access, with access to services and shops, etc. And just as a small reference, in our forecast, the component of group houses or residential care facilities is dramatically different from anything we've seen before. 2/3 of our growth from 2010 to 2040 is people over 60.
2/3.
I want to pile on just a little bit. As a former elected, local elected official, I can say pretty much everybody hates change. It's pretty much all ages, except for that quirky little part of the population that apparently likes change. So I don't think that's the province of the seniors, especially. The other thing for our county, 85% of the housing units are in single-family detached. I mean, it's a suburban county. And so while people get pretty, excited, focused on what's going to be built and do people want smart growth and are they really going to live densely and blah, 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 all of that, if we built nothing else for the next 10 years at the rate we've been building for the last 20 years, if we built nothing else but dense, compact, right on El Camino Real, whatever, the needle would move from 85% of the housing stock in the county being single-family detached to being 80% single-family detached. So it's, it's kind of how you look at it.
Yeah. Just wanted to share an inspiring story related to this. I'm in Concord. The city of Concord has a giant former Navy base that is going to be redeveloped, and that has prompted a 6-year-long community conversation that started off where I think a lot of neighbors, seniors, families, everyone was very scared of anything that looked different being developed at the Navy base than what they already had. And through a really deep conversation about what their community values actually are, what makes their community unique, I think the city has come to the realization that it's not what the development type is that makes their city unique, that it's really they value family, they value having their kids have an opportunity to live in the city where they grew up, having be for them who are talking about retiring or maybe wanting to give up a single family home, having a place to live in that community. And that city, which we think of as fairly suburban, mostly single family homes now, has adopted a plan for redevelopment that is primarily emphasizes multifamily and denser transit-oriented development for this Navy base, and in doing so preserves 70% open space, and it's also going to include housing for lower income families. So I would say that there is a lot of knee-jerk reaction that we want to keep our lifestyles together by keeping new development looking exactly like old development, but when you really dig in more deeply, you realize it may have to look different to keep the community the same.
This is interesting in response to the question you just had. Some low-income units are really second units on a property where the landowner could get certain amenities by claiming that the unit will be low-income affordable housing. What provisions are there or could there be that could assure that these units will actually be used as low-income housing, thereby enabling in most cases, seniors with large homes to rent some part and not have to go through the hoops of a rental unit kind of. Anyway, you know what I mean. Yes.
So sorry I shortchanged you on my talk about what we actually did, but that is actually one thing we actually did. So I can talk to you specifically about that. Turns out it's a real challenge to balance homeowners' right to have their homes be used the way they want to have them used and people living there. The second units of it's a very close relationship. Balance between that and affordable housing goals. And so when a jurisdiction, say in our case, Abington, Hillsborough, Portola Valley, Woodside, where they're charged with coming up with a certain amount of housing growth, say 100 units, and they want to say, well, 50 of those are going to be second units, and they're all going to be affordable. Then state HCD says, well, I don't know, that sounds like kind of a stretch. So a methodology has to be invented for how to do that balance. And so the sensible methodology is to do a survey of all the existing second units, accessory units, see who's actually living in them, and then say, okay, it looks like here's kind of the profile. State HCD, could we use this as a method? Because we work together to do our developments, we're able to get a consultant, take the 5 communities that were relying heavily, that a heavy percentage of their units were second units, come up with a common methodology that was defensible, and take that to state HCD and get it approved. We think that while there are many people that are extremely skeptical as to whether you ought to count those and whether that's real and whether blah, 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 there's just as many people who say, if I can get 50 units in Woodside, I can get 50 units in Woodside, and that's the kind of units we'll get in Woodside.
Our last question. Tell an example of a city that has changed so as to meet or exceed the RHNA target. What was the incentive for the city council? Has it happened?
I'll be really brief on this one, just to give props to the gentleman and his organization on my right. The key thing in common of a number of the communities who get awards for their housing, Corte Madera, Fremont, Nampa, Pleasanton, I'm drawing a blank on another. The organizations of public advocates that sued. Because they get so far out of the pattern of what's acceptable, even under the very squishy state law, that they get themselves sued. And then there's a big negotiation and settlement, and they say, okay, and then they do it. And so, I don't know. It wasn't his place to say that. That's how you win a war. Get sued by public advocates.
And many jurisdictions look at cities that get sued and say, we don't want to be there. So we're not talking about lawsuits everywhere, and this is not a sort of 100% coercion approach here. There are many cities that really want to do the right thing. And again, I'm from Congress, where I've been working there for more than 4 years. I haven't sued them once.